A few weeks ago, I went to a secluded clearing in the forest. I'm a park ranger, and I often take my weekends to photograph wildlife. This clearing has always been my favorite spot for its peace. I know this forest well, but being alone there always made me a little uneasy. I set up my camera as the sun began to set. There was a light breeze that rustled the leaves. It was quiet, just me and the trees. I focused on capturing the right shot. Then I heard something. At first it was faint, but then it grew louder. It sounded rhythmic, almost like a chant. I thought it was a deer or maybe a bird, but it felt wrong. I brushed it off, thinking it must be a natural sound. The next few weekends, I returned to that clearing. Each time I heard the sound again, it left me feeling unsettled. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I began to notice shadows darting between the trees. They flickered at the edge of my vision. When I looked, there was never anything there. Sometimes I thought I heard laughter. It echoed through the trees, distant yet too close for comfort. On one of those afternoons I walked closer to the tree line. I wanted to see what was there. That's when I found them, symbols carved into the trees. They looked ancient and strange. I felt an urge to reach out and touch them. My heart raced as a chill crept down my spine. I stepped back, feeling silly for being scared, but I couldn't ignore the dread in my chest. It became harder to concentrate on my photography. I felt jumpy. I kept scanning the trees, half expecting to see someone watching me. The laughter continued, echoing back to me. I thought maybe it was just my imagination. I was tired from work, but every time I returned, the feeling deepened. Then on one of my last visits I noticed something off. There was a figure standing among the trees. I squinted to see more clearly. I couldn't make out any details, but it looked like it was watching me. My heart raced. I wanted to call out to ask if they needed help. Then that figure turned and vanished behind the trees. I froze, unable to move. Almost immediately I heard the laughter again, clearer this time. It wasn't friendly. I felt a surge of fear. I didn't want to stay there any longer. My instincts kicked in, and I left the clearing as fast as I could. Now, I think about that day often. What did I see? What lies hidden in those woods? The forest feels heavier now when I go back. The laughter still rattles in my mind. I wonder if I'll ever find peace in that clearing again. The following weekend, I decided it was time to go back. I needed answers. Each passing day made the memories sharper, and the urge to confront whatever was in that clearing grew stronger. I packed my camera and extra batteries, hoping my photography could somehow distract me from the feelings of dread. As I walked deeper into the forest, every snap of a twig felt like a warning. The atmosphere was thick, almost suffocating. I could hear the wind whistling through the trees, but it felt different this time. It was as if the forest itself was whispering secrets just out of reach. When I arrived at the clearing, the shadows seemed to linger longer between the trees. I set up my camera, forcing myself to focus. I took a few shots, but the rhythm in the chants was back, echoing just beyond the edge of my hearing. I cast nervous glances around, trying to pinpoint the direction of the sound. That's when I noticed something new. The carved symbols on the trees had changed. Where there once were just simple shapes, there were now more intricate designs. They seemed to pulse with an energy I couldn't explain. I felt drawn to them, yet terrified at the same time. I took a step back, debating whether to draw closer or leave. Suddenly I heard rustling nearby. My heart raced as I turned, catching a glimpse of that figure again. This time it looked clearer, a silhouette among the trees. It stood still for a moment before moving again, this time deeper into the woods. I wanted to follow, but my body felt stuck in place. Then I did something I wanted to avoid. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice trembled. Silence followed. Just when I thought I'd imagined it, I heard a soft laugh. It was closer now, ringing out like an unearthly bell. My skin prickled, and I felt a jolt of cold wash over me. I stepped back, but something caught my eye. Among the symbols, something glinted in the fading sunlight. I approached cautiously. It was a small silver object, half buried in the dirt. I knelt down, brushing away the earth, and revealed a pendant with a strange design, the same symbols I had seen carved into the trees. Just as I picked it up, a loud crack snapped through the air, echoing around the clearing. I felt a rush of wind as if something was charging toward me. Adrenaline kicked in, and I bolted back the way I had come, clutching the pendant in my hand. I glanced over my shoulder once, and the figure was there again, standing right at the edge of the trees, watching without moving. When I finally burst out of the forest, I stumbled and fell, my heart racing and breath quickening. I could still hear the laughter echoing behind me, blending with the sound of my own panic. I squeezed the pendant tighter, feeling the cool metal bite into my palm. What had I awakened? What else was hiding in the depths of the woods? I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled into something far more significant than I could have imagined. I glanced back one last time at the darkened tree line. I had to go back. There were more answers waiting for me, whether I liked it or not. I didn't sleep much that night. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw the clearing, the symbols, and the figure watching me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had disrupted something important. When dawn broke, the light felt almost mocking. After breakfast, I weighed my options. I couldn't ignore the pendant. It was cold, and it pulsed with an energy I couldn't quite understand. I decided to research it. Maybe there was something about it online. Perhaps it had a history or connection to local folklore. For hours, I scrolled through articles and social media posts related to the forest and its legends. Nothing substantial came up, but a small mention of missing hikers caught my eye. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I clicked on the link. The article detailed several hikers who vanished without a trace, all of whom were last seen near the same forest. My heart sank. Had I unknowingly walked into a trap? I leaned back in my chair, the pendant still in my hand. It was unsettling to think about what might have happened to those people. I realized that if I was going to sort this out, I would need to find someone who knew more about the forest and its secrets. That afternoon, I visited the local library. I hoped the quiet atmosphere would help me focus. I came across old newspaper clippings and books on the region's history. Most of them were about the natural beauty and the occasional mishaps, but one section caught my attention, a segment about ancient rituals once performed by the indigenous tribes. It spoke of invoking the spirits of the forest, sometimes at a cost. The collation of stories weighed heavily on me. I flipped through pages, searching for anything that would make sense of the symbols. Just as I was about to give up, I found a drawing that resembled the pendant. My heart raced as I studied the intricate design. It appeared to represent a guardian spirit. Before I could think further, my phone buzzed, jolting me from my thoughts. It was a message from Ava, my friend who had joined me during my last visit to the forest. "Hey, you okay? I've been thinking about the forest. We should go back." The message sent a chill down my spine. Did she feel the same sense of unease? I quickly typed back, "Not a good idea. Something's off." But before I could send it, another message came in. "I know what we saw. I told my brother, and he said the clearing is a marked spot. We need to go back and find out what's really happening." I hesitated. The dread I had felt before drummed louder in my chest, but Ava's persistence stirred something within me. That night, I found it hard to make up my mind. I lay in bed, the pendant heavy on my chest. I had learned so much, but still felt so lost. Then suddenly, I heard a soft whispering, similar to the chants I had heard in the woods. My eyes flew open, heart racing. I turned on the light, looking for the source. There was nothing, but the air in the room changed. I could sense it, a presence nearby. I jumped up, feeling the urge to flee, but something compelled me to stay. I glanced outside. In the distance, I saw a flash of movement, a figure standing by the edge of the forest, and then it dawned on me. I had to go back. I was being pulled back into the darkness of the woods, But this time, I wouldn't be alone. The next morning I woke with an overwhelming sense of purpose. I texted Ava, "Let's meet up. We need to talk about going back." Just like that, I was ready to confront whatever awaited me in the forest. An hour later, we met at a cafe close to the library. Ava's energy felt electric. "I was hoping you'd change your mind," she said, eyes wide with excitement. "I have a plan." "A plan?" I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, my brother suggested we go at dusk. That's when it's most alive," he said, "but we need to be cautious. He thinks there might be a way to communicate with whatever is there." I swallowed hard. My heart raced at the thought. What if it's dangerous? "That's why I'll be with you. We'll bring some supplies, flashlights, snacks, maybe some sage to burn as an offering." She grinned. "We'll be fine." I couldn't help but feel drawn to her enthusiasm, but unease still churned in my stomach. "Ava, people have gone missing. What if we get caught up in something we can't handle? Or what if we find answers?" She shot back, determination etched on her face. Her fierce resolve swayed me. "Okay, but we stick together no matter what." We finalized our plans over coffee, gathering essentials and agreeing to meet that evening. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, I felt the air grow thicker around me. Questions buzzed in my mind. What had I seen? Who was the figure in the forest? When the time came, we drove to the edge of the woods, my heart thumping fiercely. The shadows began to stretch across the ground as dusk crept in. I gripped the pendant, feeling its chill. It felt alive, almost like it was urging me to go deeper. As we stepped into the forest, the silence enveloped us. The trees loomed overhead, their silhouettes dancing in the dying light. I could hear Ava's breath quicken beside me. "This is it," she whispered, glancing around. We moved cautiously toward the clearing, relying on our flashlights to pierce the growing darkness. Each beam revealed tree trunks, leaves rustling. But something felt different. The air pressed against my skin, heavy with anticipation. "This is where we saw the symbols," I said, halting. I pointed to the ground where the earth appeared disturbed, the scrawls almost glowing in our flashlight beams. Ava knelt down and traced her fingers over the markings. "This is incredible. What do you think it means?" Before I could respond, a low, haunting hum echoed through the trees. The sound wrapped around us, sending chills down my spine. I exchanged a glance with Ava, both of us frozen in place. "Do you hear that?" I whispered, heart racing. "Yeah," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. The humming grew louder, vibrating in my chest. I felt lightheaded, as though I was being pulled toward the source. Suddenly the air shifted again, and I caught sight of movement further inside the woods. It was faster this time, a flicker of a shadow darting behind the trees. "I think we should go," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was no safety here, not anymore. But just as we turned to leave, the humming intensified, merging into a cacophony of whispers. "Stay, stay." Then, out of the corner of my eye, something emerged from the shadows. A figure stepped into the light of our flashlights, revealing the details of its form. I swallowed hard. The forest held its breath, and I knew then that we were not alone. I blinked, trying to process what I was seeing. The figure was tall, its outline blurred by the dim light. It looked almost human, but the features were distorted, as if reality was struggling to define it. My breath caught in my throat. "Ava," I whispered, barely able to form the words. She seemed frozen too, her eyes fixated on the being that had stepped from the shadows. The humming surrounded us, wrapping tighter around my chest. The whispers became clearer, echoing like a distant chant, echoing our own fears. "Stay, stay with us." "Let's go," I finally managed to say, tugging at Ava's arm, but she didn't move. Instead, she took a step forward toward the figure. "Ava, no, don't!" My voice rose in panic. "Wait," she murmured, as she stared into the creature's eyes, or where its eyes should have been. The air around us crackled with energy. I could feel the ground vibrating beneath my feet. The forest felt alive, thrumming with something dark and ancient. I stumbled backward, pulling Ava with me, but she shook my hand off, entranced. "Maybe it's trying to communicate," she said, her voice soft, almost hopeful. A chill ran down my spine as panic surged through me. Whoever, or whatever that was, it didn't belong here. I had seen enough horror unfold the last time. "Ava!" I shouted, urgency spilling into my voice. "Come back!" At my words, the figure raised an arm, pointing toward something deeper in the woods. The symbols on the ground pulsed in unison, glowing brighter with each beat of my heart. A sense of dread washed over me. Before I knew it, the world shifted again. The shadows expanded, wrapping around us like a living entity. I turned to run, adrenaline coursing through me. I had to get out, now. "Come on!" I shouted, hoping Ava would listen. She didn't move. The whispers grew louder, now a cacophony of desperate voices. "They won't let you leave. Stay. Stay with us." In that moment, I realized something. The whispers weren't just speaking to Ava. They were calling to me, too. I took one last glance at the figure. Its form flickered like a faulty light bulb, energy pulsing and shifting, but it felt more solid, more real than anything I'd encountered. The ground beneath me felt unstable, and I darted back toward the path. "Ava!" I cried again. I had to reach her. In one swift movement, she turned her head, the spell broken. Her eyes filled with fear and confusion. She took a step back from the figure as if it had stung her. "What's happening?" "Run!" I yelled, grabbing her wrist. Together, we sprinted back the way we came, the hum fading, but the whispers trailing behind us, echoing through the trees. Then everything went dark. The flashlights flickered off, plunging us into pitch blackness. I stumbled, pulling Ava with me, my breath ragged. I had no idea how far we'd gone, or what awaited us in the black. The whispers were gone now, but the hum remained, a lingering reminder of the presence in the forest. We pressed on, fear coursing through us, knowing we were being hunted by a force we couldn't see. All I could do was push forward, praying the trees wouldn't swallow us whole. The darkness thickened around us like a wet blanket. Every sound seemed amplified, the crunch of twigs underfoot, the rustle of leaves, our panicked breaths. I kept my hand wrapped tightly around Ava's wrist, pulling her along through the pitch black. Every second felt like an eternity, dread creeping in as I worried what might lurk just beyond the reach of our fading flashlights. "Ava, do you have your phone?" I asked, my voice strained and too loud against the silence. "Yeah, but it won't help." Ava's voice was shaky. "The signal is dead out here." I cursed quietly under my breath. We needed light, a guide back to safety. As if reading my mind, she fumbled in her pocket, finally retrieving her phone. The screen lit up, a weak glow pushing back the darkness just enough to make me feel a little better. But our relief was short-lived. Just as I turned to look at her, I saw something move behind her. A shadow darted between the trees, something quick and lithe. My heart raced. "Ava!" I spun her around, pointing. "Did you see that?" She squinted into the dark. "What? Where?" "Back there." I motioned toward the spot, but whatever had moved was gone. The forest remained still, too still, as if waiting for us to make a sound. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. "Maybe it was just an animal," she suggested, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. "Yeah, right," I muttered. "In this place? I don't think so." We pressed on, trying to maintain some semblance of calm, but time felt irrelevant, like we were lost in some sort of time loop. Suddenly, Ava stopped. "Do you hear that?" I strained my ears. At first it was just the whisper of the wind, but then it came again, a low buzzing sound reverberating through the trees. My stomach dropped. "What is that?" "I don't know," she whispered, glancing nervously around. Then the buzzing shifted. It morphed into a rhythmic pulsating sound. It was almost musical, but distorted, like a haunting lullaby. The eerie melody seemed to pull at my mind, beckoning me. I shook my head, trying to fight it off. This was no lullaby. It felt like a trap. "Let's keep moving," I said, taking her hand again. The ground felt uneven, roots and stones pulling at my feet, but the sound grew louder, more insistent. The trees bent inwards, their trunks twisting in impossible ways. They looked ready to swallow us whole. As we hurried through the oppressive forest, I glanced over my shoulder. For a split second, I saw a flicker of movement, a shape, darker than the night, skirting just out of reach. My breath hitched. Was I imagining things again? "Ava!" I gasped, tugging at her arm. "We can't stop. We need to find a way out." We stumbled forward, adrenaline surging, when suddenly the ground gave way beneath us. I barely managed to grab Ava before we both tumbled down a steep incline. We landed hard on something soft, the sudden stop knocking the air from my lungs. Dazed, I blinked against the dim light filtering through the trees above. That's when I saw it. A clearing, surrounded by strange, twisted plants. And in the center, a circle of those same glowing symbols we had seen before. They pulsed with an unholy light, pulling me in like a moth to a flame. "What is this place?" Ava breathed, staring wide-eyed at the symbols. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was we had to leave, but as I looked back at the path we had just come from, a figure emerged from the shadows, its form familiar, yet wrong. The air thickened with the hum again, and I realized we weren't alone. Ava gasped beside me. "What do we do now?" Before I could respond, a deep voice echoed through the ages, chilling my core. "You have entered our domain." Panic surged, and I knew we were in deeper than we ever intended. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a woman with hollow eyes and a smile that made my stomach churn. Her hair was wild and tangled, as if she had been living among the trees for ages. "Welcome," she said, her voice dripping with an unsettling cheerfulness that felt wrong. "We've been waiting for you." "Waiting for us," I echoed, my voice barely a whisper. Ava's grip tightened around my wrist as if we could somehow meld into one to escape. The woman tilted her head, the corners of her mouth stretching wider. "You seek answers, don't you? You've heard our call in the night." There was something almost hypnotic about her, and I fought the urge to step closer. "No, we just want to go home," Ava said, her voice quaking with fear. "Please." But the woman laughed, the sound echoing through the clearing. "Home is a distant memory once you cross into this realm. You wish to leave, but you've come too far." I scanned the area, looking for any escape route. The symbols on the ground glowed brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. They seemed to respond to her presence, and I could feel the air thickening, pulling me toward them. "Ava, we need to move," I urged. I tried to step backward, but my foot felt glued to the ground as if the earth itself was holding me captive. I glanced at the woman again, and my heart dropped. Her face was changing, shifting in ways that didn't look human. "Don't be afraid," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "Embrace what you feel. You're part of this now." The buzzing returned, louder than ever, sending vibrations through my skull. I could barely think. I could only feel the pull, the desire to step toward the glowing symbols that seemed to promise something. But what? Questions swirled in my mind. What did it mean to be part of this place? "Get away from her!" Ava shouted, suddenly breaking free from my grip. She grabbed a rock from the ground and threw it at the woman. The stone flew through the air, but vanished just before it hit. The woman's smile faltered for a heartbeat. Then she broke into a laugh that chilled me to the bone. "You think you can fight it? You're already tangled in our web." She raised her hands, fingers splayed, and shadows began to swirl around her, thickening the air between us. "Ava, run!" I yelled. I pulled my foot free and took off in the opposite direction, praying desperately she would follow. The shapes in the shadows twisted and reached for us, almost grabbing at my ankles. I glanced back. Ava hesitated, her face stricken with fear as she locked eyes with the woman. I couldn't lose her. I turned back just in time to see the shadows close in, tendrils stretching toward Ava like they were alive. "Ava!" I screamed, panic surging through me. I lunged for her, my heart racing. Suddenly the ground shook. The symbols lit up blindingly, and there was a sound like thunder. The woman staggered back, shadows retreating. "You can't escape!" she roared. In that moment, I felt something give way inside me. A decision formed. "We have to break it," I shouted, desperate to break the hold this place had on us. I didn't know if words could dispel magic, but we needed hope. Ava's gaze flickered to me, anguish and surprise weaving through her expression. Then, almost instinctively, she nodded. Together, we stepped toward the glowing symbols, hands clasped tightly. That's when the ground shattered beneath us. We fell into a void of darkness, and everything went silent. I landed hard on cold, damp ground. My body jolted, the breath knocked from my lungs. I groaned and opened my eyes, blinking to adjust to the dim light surrounding us. Ava was beside me, her face pale, eyes wide with shock. "Where are we?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I pushed myself to a sitting position and looked around. We were no longer in the clearing. The air felt thick and damp, and the ground was covered in twisted roots and mushrooms that glowed faintly. It was eerily quiet, as if the forest held its breath. "What just happened?" I muttered, pulling myself to my feet. The ground around us was uneven, riddled with holes and peculiar plants that looked almost alive. I rubbed my arm where I'd fallen, wincing at the sting. My heart was still racing, but I felt a sense of urgency. Ava stood up, brushing dirt off her clothes. "We need to get out of here," she said, eyes darting around as if something might leap out from the shadows. I nodded, scanning our surroundings for any sign of an exit. "Back that way." I pointed to where I thought we had fallen from. "Maybe," she replied, uncertainty creeping into her voice. But before she could finish, a low, rumbling growl echoed through the air, sending a chill down my spine. That wasn't just the wind, was it?" I stammered, my eyes locking with Ava's. "No," she breathed, her anxiety palpable. "We need to move, now." We started walking cautiously, avoiding the shadows that seemed to twist and swirl around us. The air felt heavier, as if it were pushing against us. Each step seemed to echo, amplifying the silence around. Then I noticed something in the distance, faint light flickering among the trees. "Over there," I pointed. "Let's go toward it." We urged ourselves forward, the light growing brighter as we approached, but the closer we got, the more my heart dropped. The flickering wasn't natural. It felt wrong. It looked like a fire, but the flames were black and red, twisting in shapes that didn't make sense. "What kind of fire is that?" Ava whispered, taking a step back. "I don't know," I replied, fear creeping into my voice, "but we can't just ignore it." The growl we heard earlier returned, this time louder and closer. My stomach dropped as a figure stepped out from behind a tree. It was humanoid but distorted, limbs too long, eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. "Oh no, we need to go!" Ava gasped, grabbing my arm. I couldn't move. The figure's gaze was fixed on us, and I could feel an overwhelming dread flood through me. I'd never felt so exposed, so vulnerable. "Ava, what if it—" Before I could finish, the creature let out a terrifying screech. The light behind it pulsed, and the shadows all around us twisted violently, slithering like snakes in search of warmth. That's when I saw it. Something glimmering at the edge of the clearing, half buried in the dirt. It looked like a pendant, glowing with a soft blue light. I realized it was drawing in the darkness around it. "Look!" I shouted, pointing. "We have to get to that!" With a renewed sense of urgency, we ran toward the pendant, the creature hot on our heels. I could hear it breathing, feel the air shift as it closed in, and just when I thought we might make it, the ground cracked open once more, revealing dark chasms. "What now?" Ava shouted, panic in her voice. We teetered on the edge, glancing back at the snarling figure and the glowing pendant that might be our only hope. "Jump!" I yelled, grabbing her wrist. But as we leaped forward, all I could focus on was the light. Would it truly lead us to safety, or would it drag us deeper into this nightmare? We hit the ground hard, the impact jarring my bones. I glanced at Ava, who was still next to me, her breath coming in short gasps. We had landed in a different part of this dark place, surrounded by towering trees that twisted upward like grasping fingers. "What now?" she asked, her voice shaky. I pushed myself up and looked around. The black and red fire was gone, but the shadows still danced eerily around us, swirling as if alive. The air felt charged with tension. Weird sounds echoed, rustling, whispers, and distant guttural growls. I shivered. "We need to keep going," I said, forcing my legs to move. Ava followed, her footsteps hesitant. We walked for what felt like hours, though it could have just been minutes. The landscape shifted from a dense thicket to an open area where strange flowers with translucent petals glowed faintly, casting an unusual light. I approached one, drawn to its luminescence. The moment I reached out to touch it, a piercing shriek split the air. "Don't!" Ava shouted, grabbing my arm. "We don't know what that is." I pulled back, heart racing. "What was that?" "I don't know, but I don't want to find out either," she replied, her face pale. Just as we turned to keep moving, the ground trembled beneath us. I stumbled back, watching in horror as tendrils of shadow seeped from the flowers, snaking toward our feet. "This way!" I yelled, darting to the right, and Ava followed. We ran, but the shadows seemed to reach for us. They brushed against my ankle, cold and clammy. I jerked away, trying to shake off the feeling, but the shadows were relentless. "Are they alive?" Ava gasped between breaths, glancing back at the tendrils that followed us. "I don't know. Just keep moving," I shouted, fear propelling us forward. Ahead, I spotted a rock formation that jutted out like a refuge. "There! Let's hide behind there!" I pointed. We sprinted toward it, lungs burning, the sound of our flight mingling with the screeches from behind. As we ducked behind the rocks, the shadows writhed, momentarily halted as if confused. I pressed myself against the cold stone, feeling its solidity grounding me. Ava was beside me, trembling. "I can't believe this is happening," she whispered. "What is this place?" "I don't know, but we need to figure out how to get back," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That pendant, it could be important." Suddenly, there was a rustling above us. I looked up just in time to see how the trees twisted, revealing ancient carvings etched into their bark. They seemed to pulse with energy, illuminating the darkness around us. "Do you see that?" I murmured, pointing. "Yeah," Ava breathed, eyes wide. "It looks like a map. Could it lead us out?" I felt a flicker of hope, but quickly squashed it down. We could still be walking into a trap. "Let's take a closer look, but be careful," I said, moving cautiously toward the trees. Just then, a shadow lunged from the darkness, releasing an unearthly howl. We froze, and I held my breath. Whatever it was close. "Now or never!" I shouted, and we darted toward the carved trees, desperation giving us speed as we dove to safety. But as soon as we reached the trees, the ground began to shake again, and I realized this place was far from finished with us. The earth trembled violently, and I clutched Ava as we stumbled around the trees, hoping they would shield us from whatever was pursuing us. The sound of cracking branches and the rush of displaced air filled my ears. I could feel the oppressive energy coiling around us, like a serpent ready to strike. "Keep looking for a way out!" I yelled over the cacophony, my eyes scanning the pulsing carvings on the tree bark. They seemed to form a path, spiraling deeper into the forest. "Maybe this leads somewhere safe." Ava's breaths came fast, but she nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. As we approached the symbols, I noticed they were surprisingly warm, contrasted against the cold permeating the air around us. "Do you think they could be some sort of guide?" she asked, trying to catch her breath. "Maybe," I replied, lightly tracing my fingers over the engravings. The moment my skin made contact, a surge of energy shot through me, echoing through the ground beneath my feet. The trees around us seemed to lean toward me, their whispers rising to a crescendo. I felt pulled, physically compelled to follow the path the symbols outlined. But behind us, the shadows howled, hungry and relentless. "We might not have much time," Ava urged, fear creeping back into her voice. "We need to go now." With one last glance at the symbols, I hesitated. What if this was a mistake? But as if sensing my doubt, a sharp crack echoed behind us. The shadows surged closer, their forms twisting unnaturally. I gritted my teeth and shouted, "This way!" and we took off down the path marked by the glowing symbols. The glow brightened as we ran, guiding our steps. But with each stride, the earth beneath us shifted, fighting against our escape. Ava stumbled, and I quickly turned, grabbing her arm to steady her. "Keep moving!" I urged, my heart pounding in time with the eerie rhythm of the forest. We dashed deeper into the woods, the energy from the symbols thrumming underfoot. The path widened into a small clearing that felt surreal, bathed in an otherworldly light. At the center stood an ancient gnarled tree, massive and imposing, its limbs twisting toward the darkened sky. More of those symbols were carved into its trunk, glowing fiercely. "That tree." Ava's voice trailed off as we approached it, the warmth washing over us. "It feels different." I nodded, feeling drawn to it. "It's alive," I replied, almost in awe. "I think it's the heart of this place." The shadows behind us roared, and I turned just in time to see the creature breaking through the underbrush, its form shifting with shadow and fury. Panic surged through me again. "We need to commune with it," I hesitated, unsure of my next words. "With this place," I finished, uncertainty mixing with desperation. "What do you mean?" Ava asked, eyes wide. "We need to show we're not here to take something. We just want to leave," I said in a rush. Gathering the last of my courage, I stepped up to the tree and placed my hand on its trunk. The moment I did, the symbols flared with light, illuminating the clearing as if to block out the darkness that pressed in on us. "Please," I whispered, pouring every ounce of sincerity I could muster into the ancient wood. "We mean no harm. Let us go." A silence fell over the clearing. The growling diminished, replaced by an unsettling calm. I glanced back. The creature had stopped, hovering at the edge of the light, its form wavering as if unsure. Then, slowly, the tree responded. The glow intensified, and branches swayed, the leaves rustling in a sudden wind. I felt a surge of warmth flood through me, and the whispers began to rise again, but this time they felt less threatening, almost soothing. "Ava!" I called. "Join me!" Without hesitation she rushed to my side, placing her own hand on the tree. The moment she did, the shadows around us convulsed, shrieking in frustration. My heart raced as the warmth enveloped us both, the tree's energy pulsing in harmony with our intentions. We stood together in unison, grounding ourselves, feeling the truth of our desperation. Our thoughts entwined, a silent promise to protect each other through this. Suddenly the ground shook again, but this time it felt different, less like a threat and more like liberation. The creature, cloaked in darkness, let out a confused snarl as the shadows that comprised it began to recede. "Is it working?" Ava asked, breath hitching as she focused back on me. "I think so," I said. The tree's presence surging through us, the glowing symbols flared brighter, forming a circular barrier that pushed the shadows away. In that moment, I understood. We weren't just seeking our own escape. We were restoring balance to a wounded place. As the last of the shadows dissolved into the air, the path behind us opened, back toward the normal world. The oppressive weight lightened, giving way to the faintest traces of dawn filtering through the treetops. "Ava, let's go," I urged, taking her hand again. Together we turned towards the light, feeling the forest shift and release its hold as we moved forward, heart beating as one. With each step, I could sense that the forest was no longer just a place. It had become a guardian, acknowledging our plea and granting us passage. But as we stepped from the shadows, leaving the gnarled tree behind, I couldn't shake the feeling that some mysteries remained unresolved. The forest would carry our secrets, and perhaps one day it would cry out again. I glanced back one last time at the border of light, feeling the pendant in my pocket grow warm, pulsing gently, reminding me of the strange connection we'd forged. What had we awakened? What other shadows lingered within the trees? Those answers would remain unknowable, forever woven into the fabric of a place that was as much a part of us as we were of it. "I have questions," Ava said softly, breaking the silence as we made our way home. "Me too," I replied, but for now I could only breathe and marvel at the thin breeze that seemed to whisper through the trees, alive with untold stories. There was peace here, for now, but the forest echoed with lessons learned and mysteries that may never be revealed.